Oh, Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
Now, Kurt's convinced that Robert De Niro's on some kind of Epstein list or some kind of thing like that, and then he's afraid that if Trump does get power, he's going to expose him, and he is actually going to come at him.
Of course Kurt thinks that.
That's what Kurt thinks that.
Kurt thinks that about everything that happens in the world.
I think Robert De Niro's just got Trump derangement syndrome.
I think he's old, too. There's a thing about old men.
And
they want to yell at everybody.
And he's completely... Did you see when he went and gave that speech outside of the trial? That was bizarre.
Who told him that was a good idea?
Robert De Niro might play the tough guy on screen, but Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly weren't buying the act. One's a podcast bruiser, the other a media sharpshooter, and together they tore into De Niro's political tirade like it was a flop. At the box office, Rogan called out the double standards. Kelly dismantled the celebrity bubble, and suddenly, De Niro wasn't the godfather, he was just the cranky uncle yelling at the dinner table. What triggered the takedown? Maybe the sick tone, maybe the Hollywood smugness. Either way, the roast was a masterclass. Someone give it an Emmy.
The garbage outside today. Robert De Niro, officially sent by the Biden campaign, makes himself look like an idiot and reminds us why Trump is so popular.
It's so stupid. It was colossally stupid. If you're going to send somebody to go speak outside of the Trump trial, make it someone who's universally beloved, like a Michelle Obama. You know, she's not universally loved. She's not loved on the right. But I'm saying, like, at least within the left and the center left, and maybe even some center righties. Robert De Niro has gone so hard partisan over the past 8 years. He is like example number one of Trump derangement.
Robert De Niro might play the tough guy on screen, but Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly weren't buying the act. One's a podcast bruiser, the other a media sharpshooter, and together they tore into De Niro's political tirade like it was a flop. At the box office, Rogan called out the double standards. Kelly dismantled the celebrity bubble, and suddenly, De Niro wasn't the godfather, he was just the cranky uncle yelling at the dinner table. What triggered the takedown? Maybe the sick tone, maybe the Hollywood sickness. Either way, the roast was a masterclass. Someone give it an Emmy.
At regular people. He's like, fuck you, you're a gangster. Go fuck you. Like,
it's crazy that's the guy from Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
You know what also I think those guys have no friends. I think the only friends they have are Hollywood phonies. And so you're in this weird world where everybody you talk to is a phony, and you become a phony, and everyone's a phony, and your grasp on reality is very slippery, and your eyes are going.
Enter Joe Rogan, guy who can go from discussing elk meat to dismantling celebrity nonsense in the time it takes De Niro to sigh dramatically. Rogan didn't pause, didn't pretend De Niro had a point worth entertaining. Why would he? Watching De Niro rant about politics is like watching someone argue with a toaster loud, overheated, and guaranteed to fill the room with the stench of scorched ego and secondhand embarrassment.
Old people's text messages, the fucking text on their phone is like as big as my hand.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And so your vision of the world is blurring, literally and figuratively, and then you're getting old, and when old people are tired and cranky, they just want everyone to listen to them, and they don't have time to have a calm conversation, and you state out your opinion, I'll state my opinion, let's see where we have common ground. Get off my lawn! And that's what he's doing. That's what he's doing. He's being this old grumpy man that is so lost that he thinks it's a good idea to stand in front of a bunch of people on the street and give a speech on camera about how bad Donald...
Rogan didn't offer a critique. He delivered a full-on open-field tackle. De Niro had been strutting around like a geriatric gladiator, hurling word salads at anyone to the right of Rachel Maddow. Then Rogan rolled in part bulldozer, part backwoods philosopher, and deadpanned. What is this guy even doing? He didn't need an answer. It was a rhetorical clothesline, flattening a once-revered icon and pinning him to the cultural dartboard stuffed, mounted, and spinning, as a caricature of himself on his farewell tour of
Robert De Niro has gone so hard partisan over the past 8 years. He is like example number one of Trump derangement syndrome. He's one of those, I'm moving to Canada if he wins, and he's never going to leave the White House if he wins. We're going to have Trump forevermore. I mean, hello, I hate to break it to you because I realize you're advanced age too, Robert, but people die. So he will leave. One way or the other, he's going to go. And in the not too distant future, even if Trump says he shouldn't have to. But in any event, he didn't do that the last time, Paul. Can you really picture a scenario in which Trump is more determined to hold on to power than he was at the last time in 2020, going into 2021? And what did he do ultimately?
Rogan didn't just toss a few jabs. He broke down De Niro like he was debunking a conspiracy about moon landings, lizard people, and CIA dolphins in board shorts. To him, De Niro's endless political tirades weren't just dramatic, they were borderline deranged. The whole performance had the logic of a method actor crashing a PTA meeting in full costume. And honestly, who's still buying it? Maybe a couple of retired New Yorker editors and the ghost of Marlon Brando from the afterlife, just to pass the time.
Why is he talking about this? Why is he talking about this publicly?
I'm going to say one thing. Trump.
If you're going to come out and say that you have a really deep-seated hatred for one of the two people running for president, you can't just be, he's a bully, he's a piece of shit, I hate him.
He's an idiot. Colin Powell said it best. He's a national disaster. He's an embarrassment to this country. It makes me so angry that this country has gotten to this point, that this fool, this bozo, has wound up where he has.
You probably, if you're going to express yourself about it and alienate 50% of the country, which it seems like it is, you're going to have to do better than that. You should have some specific things. Like he did some real estate deals with people in New York. Let me tell you what he did to people over.
I would love to hear it.
He did this and that. Let me tell you what he did that was fraud. He did.
De Niro predictably stayed silent, probably busy filming another role as a cranky old man mumbling through plot points before growling out a moral so rough it needs closed captions. But Joe Rogan wasn't looking for nuance. He was there too. Spotlight the absurdity of a man once famous for brooding silence now ranting louder than a conspiracy theorist on day 3 of Burning Man. Then came Megyn Kelly, not with elk jerky and punchlines like Rogan, but in heels, armed with facts and enough verbal venom to drop a herd of bulls mid. She sliced through De Niro's meltdown with clinical precision, coolly noting, "This is what happens when actors confuse a teleprompter for a podium." Where Rogan laughed him off like a dazed fan crashing a UFC win, Kelly stripped the performance, burno drama, just demolition. Together, they exposed the transformation of Robert De Niro from silver screen legend to political cartoon. Not tragic, just tired. A one-man PSA on how to torch your own legacy in real time.
Robert De Niro, who's got a severe case of the TDS, is in Contrance right now, as all of the muckety-mucks are. And he's very unhappy about what Trump is doing to try to keep filmmaking, American filmmaking, in America by slapping tariffs on foreign-made films so that he can basically try to force people to make them domestically again for the American audience that they're meant to serve. And here's what De Niro said on Tuesday.
America's Philistine president has had himself appointed head of one of our premier cultural institutions. He has cut funding and support to the arts, humanities, and education. And now he has announced a 100% tariff on films produced outside the U.S. Let that sink in for a minute.
She didn't have to raise her voice, that was the brilliance. When Megyn Kelly strikes, she doesn't shout, she carves. And De Niro, he landed on her commentary table like a cautionary tale in washed-up celebrity activism. One calm stare, one scalpel-sharp sentence. And his political persona folded like a wet cocktail napkin in a wind tunnel. To be clear, Kelly wasn't coming for his acting, no one's denying the legacy. Taxi driver, iconic, raging bull, unmatched. Meet the parents, still quoted by your uncle who thinks he's the life of the barbecue. But this wasn't about movies. It was about a man who once whispered, "You talkin' to me?" Now screaming, "Listen to me," at anyone who didn't vote his way. And that's where Kelly twisted the blade. The fall from cinematic legend to full-time political scold wasn't just awkward, it was absurd. Like a hawk circling a confused housecat, she picked apart the tragicomedy of De Niro, believing his rage was some kind of civic duty. She likened his descent to waking up in a bathrobe and an inflated ego, declaring yourself mayor of moral clarity, unopposed. Of course, because no one else wants the job. Now, De Niro's out there shadowboxing phantom fascists, one shaky rant at a timeless national treasure. More neighborhood alarmist with a megaphone and no off switch.
For De Niro, there's something about being a star where you think your opinion's more important than anybody else's, and you can go give a press conference. And he obviously has been very vocal from 2016 that he hates Trump for whatever reason. Maybe they have some personal thing.
You think Trump ever threw a punch himself or took one? This guy who ran and hid in the White House bunker when there were protesters outside? No way.
Now he's like holding press conferences. Now everyone's heckling him everywhere he goes.
That's so bad.
Like instead of just being this cranky old liberal, now you're this guy that is yelling at other people that are Trump supporters, and they're yelling at you. Like you've opened yourself up to this.
Meanwhile, Joe Rogan's probably still in his studio, half laughing, half genuinely baffled. wondering if De Niro even has a PR team or if he's just freelancing chaos now. Rogan didn't just roast him. He looked stunned that a guy with that much cinematic clout could spend his twilight years turning into the human version of every grumpy cartoon grandpa ever drawn. And the beauty. It wasn't partisan. Rogan didn't come swinging a MAGA hat, he came with sheer millennial confusion. Like, why is Robert De Niro yelling? Still yelling? Who keeps handing this man microphones without attaching a sedative and a countdown timer? Watching De Niro now is like seeing a vintage Rolls-Royce doing donuts on the White House lawn. You respect the history, but good lord, somebody stop it before it flips. And that's exactly what both Rogan and Kelly nailed. De Niro isn't just going off script, he's ad-libbing his legacy into late-night sketch comedy material. The tragedy. No one in Hollywood has the spine to pull him aside and say, "Bobby, buddy, maybe take a breath before your next cable news tantrum." Now imagine the alternate reality where De Niro actually watches their takedown. He'd probably try to act offended, which would be hilarious coming from a guy who's spent the last 5 years turning every interview into a one-man Broadway production of Rage, the musical. Volume permanently stuck at 11.
De Niro doesn't want to play someone truly evil, you see. At least not a certain someone. Maybe Jimmy was a Democrat. By the way, De Niro is also very upset that Donald Trump is an alleged racist. Wonder if he pulled Jimmy Kimmel aside last night and asked him to atone for his blackface-loving past.
Rogan probably would have tossed De Niro a protein bar, told him to breathe through his nose, and quietly wondered how Taxi Driver turned into Angry Grandpa Live. Megyn. She'd flash that surgical smile, nod once, and proceed to carve through his relevance like a stale op-ed from 2007, precise, effortless, and with zero sentimental attachment. Here's the beauty of it. Neither had to break a sweat. De Niro's public persona is already ballooned with old awards and overheated outrage, one well-placed jab, and it floats off like a relic of its own ego. Rogan's confused chuckles said what we're all thinking. This is the hill he's choosing. Disheveled suit, crimson face, ranting like democracy personally insulted his charcuterie board. He looked less like a cultural icon, more like someone who just lost a Facebook argument and took it public. And Megyn. She didn't pose the question, she performed the autopsy. De Niro's descent wasn't shocking. It was slow motion. The man who once whispered his way through cinematic greatness now shouts half-formed political monologues like he's trying to remember his lines and his enemies at the same time. She didn't just call it sad, she framed it as farce. A legendary actor refusing to exit gracefully, knocking over the scenery on his way out. Rogan and Kelly didn't tag team him. They didn't need to. De Niro imploded solo, no script. No spotlight. Just the sound of a legacy collapsing under the weight of its own self-importance.
You didn't think this through. Like, this is, and he's getting yelled at. He's doing an outside press conference. Like, Robert, you're 80 years old. Don't ruin this thing. You've had this life where you were a fucking raging bull. You know, you were in The Godfather. Like, stop doing this. Man. Don't do.
And here's the cherry on top of this celebrity meltdown Sunday. Neither Rogan nor Kelly actually wants De Niro to stop. Why would they? The man's turned into his own late-night sketch, raging, unscripted, every appearance a masterclass in accidental self-parody. Who kills a show when the lead keeps writing new episodes of Old Man, yells at podium in real time? Watching a living legend with more Oscars than cohesive sentences morph into a full-time political caricature. It's not just entertainment tits, cultural junk food. You know it's bad for you, but you keep watching. It's raccoon meets watermelon energy. Chaotic, tragic, and completely mesmerizing. Rogan, drifting somewhere between a UFC win and a DMT afterglow, looked almost sympathetic. Like watching a guy try to rage tweet from a flip phone while the rest of the world's on neural sync. As for Megyn, ever the scalpel in heels, she practically offered him a retirement brochure, Palm Springs, Sudoku, decaf tea, and a firm no cameras clause. Because the issue isn't that De Niro has opinions, it's that he's turned those opinions into one-man theater. This isn't dialogue. It's a monologue delivered at full volume, like he's auditioning for Angry Man in a Bathrobe, the HBO limited series. And ironically, that might be his most authentic role in years. So here's where it ends. Rogan peeled back the myth, laughed at the chaos, and let the absurdity speak for itself. Megyn, she didn't debate, she diagnosed. With clinical clarity and a grin, she zipped the body bag on De Niro's cultural relevance and tagged it, cause of death, chronic outrage with delusions of gravitas.
People shouting him down like, your movies suck. That's not true.
No, his movies are very good.
Suck. He's one of the greatest actors. I mean, he's the heir apparent to Brando, blah, blah, blah. But he's a loon.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to just say what he is. He's, he has, basically, I describe this to people. You know what's happening now? Because people are aware about concussions and the problems with CTE. When you get hit and you get a dinger in football, they put you in the blue tent, in the sideline.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen to Democrats. They need to go in the blue tent for a little bit, kind of, get your eyes checked, and then come out and be rational again.
Yeah, cool off
and
a
De
little.
Niro needs to go in the blue tent. I mean, because it's not calming things down. We need to be...
Robert De Niro, once the embodiment of cinematic gravitas, hasn't just lost the room, he's lost the script. He's no longer a revered icon being gently ribbed by late-night comedians. He's a cautionary tale being dissected by cultural snipers. These days, his most scathing director isn't behind a camera, it's Joe Rogan, mumbling, "What is this guy even doing?" Between elk jerky bites and Megyn Kelly. She didn't mock, she operated. Surgical precision, zero anesthesia. The result, a career post-mortem so clean, De Niro didn't even flinch. He just fell silent, which, ironically, said more than any angry monologue ever could. Rogan moved on to aliens and kettlebells. Kelly found her next overexposed target. And De Niro, he probably barked at a smart speaker and called it resistance. Together, they didn't just mock him, they handed him a mirror and waited. But De Niro, still mid-rant, never paused long enough to see the reflection. The man who once built a legacy on restraint and power is now starring in a one-man show called The Decline, shouting at shadows and daring anyone to call it art. What we're witnessing isn't just a fall from grace, a cinematic implosion in real time. Legacy, torched, message, lost in volume. De Niro has shifted from method acting to method shouting, and the performance is so off-script it needs subtitles and a stage intervention. This isn't a political statement. It's a masterclass in how to unravel your own myth one outburst at a time.
Project needs friends.
Yeah.
As research.
Looking for cast. I don't know. I'm just checking.
What De Niro projects are even around? I mean, well, De Niro's probably trying to figure out where all his money's going because he's getting divorced right now, so he's probably... he's getting divorced.
Rogan, never one for subtlety, called out just how far De Niro has fallen. From legendary actor to angry political ranter growling into microphones. Meanwhile, Megyn Kelly was practically handing out eviction notices to what was left of his credibility, clearing the stage like she was renovating a dusty old mansion full of fading trophies and tired monologues. The audience, a mix of shock and satisfaction, but mostly glued to the spectacle, because let's be honest, there's something oddly satisfying about watching a once great celebrity crumble under the weight of their own ego. De Niro may think he's still fighting the system, but the real machine is public opinion, and right now, it's watching his meltdown on loop. With Rogan's amused laugh and Kelly's cool stare as the soundtrack, on the end, being the loudest in the room doesn't mean you're right, it just means everyone can hear you spiral. And De Niro, he's spiraling in surround sound.